I just heard a ding. I think that means we're live. Welcome, everyone, to the live broadcast on LinkedIn. This is our second broadcast of the year, getting the group together. This is a special opportunity to get people of different perspectives together. You know, usually you listen to, we all have our favorite sources, and everything is in flux, everything is dynamic all the time. And you listen to like the people that you kind of already agree with, maybe, or maybe you try to branch out and listen to other sources, but inevitably that source, it's just a bunch of people that all agree with each other there as well. So what we're trying to do here is get people from several perspectives together. So it's not just an echo chamber. So these are experts in their various fields, and we'll have a discussion. Like, we've been getting together every 3 months, and we just get together and see what everybody's working on again. And anybody can push back on anybody else, say, I don't agree with that, or that's not what I'm seeing something different. And that right there is so valuable. And so I've got a couple people on here already from our experts. And also, after about an hour, maybe now it's only like 50 minutes since we're starting a little late, we will share the URL so that the audience members can come on to this chat as well. And then we'll have a further discussion for another hour for anybody who can stay on. It's lots of fun to be able to interact, and then let them as well ask their questions and submit their perspectives. We've got a couple people that are on so far. We're expecting at least one more of our experts, and one of the experts might be able to come on a little later. So I guess I'll go first in introducing myself. My name is Justin. For those who don't know, I am the host of this podcast. I try to get this together. I was a corporate lawyer for 10 years, but I studied computers before. And so as I was a corporate lawyer, I just started applying my computer skills to my work, and I found that I was able to automate. My perspective is that you need a balance of traditional programming for automation, and then you can bring in AI where it's appropriate to do things appropriately. So I don't see it being an and I don't see it being one or the other, but maybe it's a mix of both. And maybe start with the simple things that you already have, and then expand that where it's appropriate. All right. I have Srinidhi on my screen next.
Yes,
Can you introduce
you
yourself
can
for a
go
minute?
ahead. Yeah. Hello,
Yeah.
I'm Srinidhi, and I'm an entrepreneur in the legal slash compliance slash regulation space. Previously, I built an AI contract review software that now functions, as I like to call it, a headless SaaS product integrating into a multi-billion dollar enterprise software company. So I am excited, that I was able to see that journey through. And I am now continuing to push ahead in the compliance space, specifically focused on engineering projects.
That's interesting. Wow. And Emma.
Hey, my name's Emma Kelly. I'm not an attorney, but I've been in the legal industry for about 20 years at this point. I think this year's my 20th anniversary being in legal. I've been worked at large law firms, media companies, service providers, startups, run the gamut of providing technology or knowledge management to attorneys. Now I have a couple of different ventures. I have my consultancy, Quad K, where I work with early stage legal tech and GRC companies on their go to market strategy. And then I also am a co founder of Symbio, which we're going to be launching soon. It's a startup that it provides evaluations and certifications of LLM and SLM driven products to certify that they account for the deficiencies in generative AI in accuracy, recency, and consistency.
Interesting. So there are deficiencies.
Yes.
All right. How do we want to kick this off? Do we want to talk about maybe where we left off last time. Maybe some of you talked about the projects and goals that you had for the coming year when we met last January, and maybe how things are going. Also, there's been a lot in the news lately. There's this new thing called like OpenClaw, and then Claude Code was also leaked massively. So like I'm seeing tons of risks to anybody that's using these things.
Yeah, no, I think like the Claude Code thing is very interesting. And I think you could combine that with especially what you're seeing in legal right now, the drive towards like vibe coding, and like for lawyers or like legal quants. This idea that instead of buying tools, we can use a lot of these off-the-shelf tools from Claude to create your own workflows, right? Or to create your own tool. So instead of buying a tool, you can make a tool that does exactly what you want it to do. Which I think is kind of the dream of a lot of people, right? Like, why buy a product? Why deal with all of that when then maybe it has some bells and whistles you don't need, or maybe it doesn't exactly fit your workflow. You could just build something I think is really appealing, right, to a lot of people. And I think like looking at like OpenClaw and things like that, then you see like, okay, but then there's some risk here as well, right? There's risk here for security. There's risk here in the actual code base that it'll collapse because a lot of people doing this aren't actually coders. Uh, but I think you bring up, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on here with that.
I would like to add a different point of view here because, Justin started with, disagreeing is also important. I'm actually not disagreeing with you in this instance, but with my journey, right now, I started doing a lot of work for my current clients myself. And, I am not a professional coder, or like I used to be a banker. I was not, a techie. But I think the advancement in LLMs right now are allowing for me to be much more empowered. And so it's not like I don't want to hire a senior engineer or whatever, but like for the time being, like if I'm able to, like do a good job, like not waste time going back and forth between the engineer and me and the clients, like that is a big advantage for me. But where I really agree with you is on like the security risk, especially on the data side. Since I like a lot of data that I'm actually collecting and labeling is publicly available information. So that's not the data that I'm worried about. I am worried about the data that the client send me, which is more confidential, and how I process and send back the final analysis to them. So I do take a lot more measures around that data. So it's like finding the right balance and like making sure what data is safe to play around with, and what you need to like handle with white glove attitude.
I'm afraid that the more powerful this is, the more ability there is for it to mess things up. Like I've seen stories that it's like deleting entire
Mhm.
code bases on Amazon. Like Amazon wasn't able to work for like 12 hours. Another person, like it just deleted all their emails. It's like, wait, that wasn't the point. That's not what I wanted.
Yeah, but then I'm also surprised, and if everything looks 2020 in hindsight, but I'm also surprised by, people who do give complete access of their inbox to some AI agent. Like, why did you do that in the first place is my question.
Yeah, I think the Amazon one, it brings up a good point about constructive friction, right? Where I think like, automating too many things, whether it's in coding or legal or things like that, where you don't have, and I don't want to say human in the loop, but where you don't have some sort of friction where somebody has to do something, uh, does create these kind of issues, right? Where it's just going to keep going and keep doing, and like, oh, you told me to clean up your inbox. Your inbox is cleaned up. I deleted everything. Or you said you wanted to get better at business development. So I paid all this money to this LinkedIn guru I found for you. Or different things like that.
I bribed the government officials.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you said you needed. But I think it is very like I think it's that idea of constructive friction, because some of what I'm seeing is, especially when talking about legal, or like I've seen, some people creating like AI native law firms, where it's saying like, hey, a lot of what we don't realize that jobs are is just overcoming friction, right? So a lot of people's tasks that they have in their job is because there's currently friction there. And so if you remove that, if you can do it with AI, then that job isn't needed anymore. But then it's kind of like, well, is the friction actually helpful in some cases? Right? Like, is it something that you should, just because you can automate everything doesn't mean necessarily you should automate everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to hear your perspective, Justin, because your automations, what you do.
Well, I did a podcast episode a couple weeks ago. It was titled "Efficiency is Not Innovation." What I'm seeing is that everybody wants to increase efficiency. That is the easiest story to tell. Like, look, we saved a little bit of money, saved a little bit of time. We were able to get rid of just a couple of people, and like line goes up. You can tell this story to the board of directors or whatever. It's kind of like I gave the analogy Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a place where you could rent videos at videotapes like 20 years ago at a physical store, and it was very popular in the United States. Everybody go then and rent their videos there. Nobody could compete with them because they had so many locations. They had every single video, the best customer experience when you go in. Okay. Then there was this little startup called Netflix. Netflix did not compete, creating the same kind of experience with the same locations. Instead, Netflix changed the game. They said, what if we just allow people to, first it was mailing DVDs in the mail, and then they went to streaming. And they actually went to Blockbuster and said, hey, do you guys want to buy us? And Blockbuster said, no, everybody likes coming in, and they were the number one player. So if Blockbuster was just to go for more efficiency, better placement of their stores, easier way to select things in the store. That's what they would be doing. That's efficiency. But innovation is to completely change the game and to see what doesn't exist in the world yet that we can build. And that's where startups can just completely flip the game and eat the lunch of the big players that exist today. So that's where I would like to see AI go more, is let's be creative. Like, let's not just make a faster horse. Let's create the car and then go to the rocket, because a faster horse will never get you to the next technology, right? So yeah, if that goes back to efficiency, don't just get stuck on efficiency.
Yeah, but the point to that also is, I guess, like you're right, like startups are going to be good at this because the bigger companies need to get buy-in from so many people before like something even sees the day of light. And this reminds me of something that I heard yesterday, and don't hold me to it because I did not go and verify, the data for this. I heard that after Legora raised about 500 million or so, they went and bought some startup in 4 weeks. And this startup doesn't have product or revenue, or like it doesn't have like the usual metrics, like business oriented metrics, but they were bought on some agentic AI workflow capability, something like that. And that is also interesting to see because Legora itself is barely out of its startup phase. Like it is not an old company. It has not been around for like 5-7 years. So it is interesting to see like the so-called like bigger AI quasi startups also trying to like buy smaller companies to like improve their speed or their market positioning. So that was an interesting, data point for me to consider.
Hmm.
But Emma works a lot with startups. She can give us
I know, I know.
inputs
I
on
think it's an interesting, it's kind of like the Wild West right now with startups, right? Especially in legal tech, because there's a lot of money being thrown at it right now. It's interesting anecdote with Legora, because you're seeing that, that a lot of startups are kind of hoping that they're going to be bought up by some of these bigger players, whether it's Legora or Harvey or products that are focused more on the mid-market. Like if Filevine's been making a lot of acquisitions, um, Clio's been making a lot of acquisitions. So kind of hoping that they'll be bought up. It was really interesting being at Legal Week because I did the exhibit hall floor, and there were definitely a lot of companies on the exhibit hall floor, and not even including ones that couldn't afford to be there, that do a lot, that are very similar in what they do. And it was very hard, even for me, somebody in the industry, to try to figure out how they're differentiated
But
in
they are
some
not.
way.
But most of the
They're
time
not.
they
Yeah,
are
I mean,
not.
I think that's kind of the point. But it's not even just me. It's everyone I talk to. They're like, yeah, right? They're like 4 or 5 different drafting tools. And then I guess the devil's advocate in me thought, because I come from the e-discovery world, I'm like, oh, well, there's like a number of e-discovery platforms that have been around for a while that are also on the exhibit hall floor. So maybe there are differentiations that I'm not aware of. But to me, where I look and I'm like, okay, well, give me, and I was just like, hey, like, what do you guys do? Give me your pitch. And like, it was very interesting too, people not really being able to articulate the value of
Yeah.
what they do or what their product
Yeah,
does.
that reminds me of something that I read, especially with one of the ones that you mentioned, who are doing a lot of acquisition, like one of the bigger ones, is like one of the acquired companies made a statement that they chose the acquisition route versus trying to go and raise more funding because they thought that the market had reached a level of saturation in the vertical that they were operating in. So they were okay or like felt like there was a more upside to them personally going the acqui-hire. So it's not even like, a traditional acquisition. It is at this point, it's a lot of these acquisitions are actually acqui-hire setups disguised as acquisitions. So they thought that was a better route to go on versus like trying to push the company through. And I don't know if it's like sad or like if this is how like things evolve. Like this is the first time I am experiencing all of this. Like maybe Emma can give more insights from the e-discovery time. But I think all of this is on steroids now because you don't need to hire so many engineers to write code. You don't need to you just like don't need so much of the infrastructure that you needed like 2 decades ago to do this stuff. So I think the competition is going to be fierce unless you have an extreme unfair advantage in one of these verticals.
Let's let Colin introduce himself.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
maybe
Well, sorry for the
to
late
react to that.
arrival. Colin Levy, General Counsel of Malbec, a contract lifecycle management company, and definitely understand the meaning of saturation, considering the sector we're in. I also am a general legal tech educator, adjunct professor, and an author. I want to go back to something, Emma, you said when you were at Legal Week, which is about the fact that there were so many companies and none of them could necessarily articulate their sort of their value as opposed to another company. And I've long kind of seen that happen in a lot of different spaces within legal tech. And I think the problem is kind of twofold. I think on the one hand, you've got companies who kind of lean into this idea that lawyers and legal professionals like control. So they all want to do things a different way. And so therefore they offer different tools that do things slightly differently to accommodate different ways of operating. I'm not sure how far that will get you, but clearly it's what's driving, I think, a few companies. And then on the other hand, you've got, I think, a lot of investment that is driving the creation and the growth of a lot of these companies. And the problem is, I do some investing myself, and maybe I'm just crazy. And feel free, all of you, to call me out if you think I am. But I would not invest in some of these sectors, not because I don't like the people. People are great. It's more the growth and the value. I don't see it because I think that companies are having a difficult time differentiating themselves, number one. Number two, I think that there's a funny thing about choice. You can have too few or too many, and you end up at the same result with both. In other words, people get confused and they feel like they have no choice if they have too many because they get overwhelmed. And if they have too few, they feel like they have no choice because they don't have enough choices. The last thing I would say is that I think that legal tech and AI within legal tech need to do some hard thinking about what it means to be legal tech going forward. Like, what does that actually mean? Because it seems like we've covered, the market has grown. We have a lot of tools that do a lot of different things. And yet, at the same time, it seems like we have a lot of tools that are especially focused on certain elements of those things, like drafting, for example. Tons of tools in that space. Why? I don't know. I mean, gosh, I don't, I feel like no one needs a lot of them. Contract cycle management tools, there's a ton of them. I happen to work for one. I like them a lot, obviously, because I wouldn't work for them if I didn't like them. But there is a lot of companies that do what we do. So I don't know. I guess it's more of a philosophical kind of point I'm trying to make here, but there needs to be a little bit of a reckoning, I think, at some point. And yeah, we'll see where things go. I'm actually interested to see when I'm at Clock in May, what that is like and how that compares, and whether I have the same experience, Emma, that you had at Legal Week of a lot of companies and them not being able to kind of tell me their value. The good news for me being at an event like that is there are a lot of what I call sales bros at those events who don't know who anyone is. And so I often can get kind of better information or get a better sense from them as to kind of what they feel like their selling point is, because they don't know me from Adam or know anyone else from Adam. So that'll be interesting. So I'm definitely planning to do a little recon to figure out kind of what the feeling is. But it's definitely growing. I'm definitely getting a stronger sense of what you spoke to, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's disheartening.
Yeah, I think in some ways disheartening. I do think about like the counterpoint, right? Where we can have like, for instance, the multiple e-discovery platforms, and I see new ones coming up, which I think is cool and exciting. Because I think there's room for growth in that. But the ones that are succeeding are doing something different, or doing something unique. And I think that's a thing in some of these products. I'm like, how are you different other than your marketing? And maybe it is when you are throwing all this kind of money into legal tech, it's mainly going into GTM, right? Like I would say more so than product. Like when you see a lot of these companies start investing in sponsoring like sports, for instance, where I just saw like 8 a.m. is the official service provider. I don't even know how they framed it as for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Or I think Harvey has tennis. Lagora has something. Like it's a lot of the money's being kind of thrown at that, right? And getting people to use your products. Like a lot of the like craziness I saw at Legal Week was for that. But it was interesting. I went to the ABA Tech Show last week, which is more focused on like smaller and mid-sized law firms. And there was a little less craziness. There were still like a lot of different tools there. There were like a lot of different like practice management, case management, things that are more focused on that level of law. But there were still some where I was like, okay, how are you different? Why do I need 2 or 3 of these? But I also think about like when I go to the hardware store, like I'm not that handy. I'm not a professional contractor or anything. But if I need a hammer and I go to the aisle, there's still like a bunch of hammers, right? I go and I'm like,
Sledgehammer.
this hammer feels good. I think I'll be able to use it. But maybe if I'm an expert carpenter or something else, I'll be like, oh, well, actually, like I use this hammer for this, and I use this hammer for this, or like this is the good one, or like.
Oh yeah,
Hammer.
no, I think you're exactly right
Yeah.
there. Sorry, that really resonated with me because my
Yeah.
husband is the ultimate handiman, and he
Oh, there
is
you go. So you're
is
like,
that way.
oh,
Like if he goes to, I joke that Home Depot is kind of like his second home because he's literally there all the time. Usually for a very specific reason, but he definitely knows, look, I want to use this hammer or this tool. That one's crap. I'm not going to use it. I want this or what have you. Literally everything under the sun he has an opinion about. I don't really. But that is a good counterpoint because for some people, I don't know how many, but clearly there must be a good number. They want a certain specific tool maker of a tool because it just happens to be a better quality or what have you with respect to what they're trying to do. So there is that. I think the challenge is just that for those of us who don't have that kind of strong feeling or strong knowledge, we don't see it and others do. And I would be curious to get a sense from folks who do kind of what they're like, what's the driving factor? What is it about whatever tool they want to be using that they feel so strongly about that they go to that one versus something else?
I've
And
been
whether it's
hearing that
personality driven, work driven, what is the driving impetus?
I've been hearing that there will be different, like large foundational LLMs for different things. So, like Claude could definitely be the foundation model for coding. A different one might be for generating text and there's different kinds of text, right? There's text that you read for information. There's other text that you just read for entertainment, like a story and poetry. So different AIs will give you different kinds of products, right? And what I've heard with Google Gemini is that it will be like the LLM for like scientific truth going forward. It's going to be the one discovering drugs and things. And so we might say like, hey, it's not so good at coding or writing a fairy tale story or something. And Google is saying, you know what? We don't care because that's not where the future is. The future for creating is way over here. So you have to know, like, what is it that you're doing? There's going to be a different tool. Like, there's not just going to be a general pocket knife, like a Swiss Army knife that does everything. If you buy something that claims it does everything, it's going to be crap at like everything it does.
There was an interview by like CEO of Claude who mentioned that they purposefully did not take like the OpenAI strategy of becoming what do you call that? A mass favorite chat box tool, and they focused more on enterprises and positioning their large language model towards solutions for enterprises and kind of shifting the responsibility from themselves to the enterprises to solve the use case problem or like the pricing problem, so on and so forth. But then I speak to so many people around the world, and most of them use ChatGPT. They do use the free version, like very few actually pay for them. But then ChatGPT has this advantage of so much of a conversation, transaction, so many things happening on that platform. And you're right, like for different domains, like different foundational models have already started to shine. I use ChatGPT for very specific things, like if I want to polish my email or if I want to polish like a LinkedIn post that I want to post, I think ChatGPT does a good job at that. And Claude and Gemini are like extraordinarily disappointing for what I want to see on the screen. But there are certain things for which I go to Gemini for image creation, like video making, and like the Nano Banana, like leveraging Nano Banana for things like that. And for Claude, it's for like the engineering coding side of things. So I don't think that future is far away. I think we're already seeing that divergence happen.
I would also say, though, from the other end, like we might be complaining about the vendors not knowing what they need to be selling to us. When I talk to the vendors say the customers can't tell us what they need. They're just being told from above, use AI. And so they come to the vendors and say, do you guys have AI? And the vendors are like, AI for what? And they can't tell you. They can't tell the vendor what they need.
That's a tough thing, right? Where if your mandates to use AI or like, I talk to a lot of people, like their, internal goals are based on like how much AI are you using, or like, like define what AI, and it's like, well, what does that mean, right? I think that's your point, is like we're saying like use a tool without knowing solving the problem. So like Colin, like kind of like the hardware example, if somebody were like, all right, go use a hammer, and you're like, okay, what am I using the hammer for? And
let's say you have a rat problem.
Okay, I have to nail something up. All right, I guess that makes sense to use a hammer. Or if it's like, okay, I have a hammer. Okay, let me go fix my dishwasher. It's like, nope, that's not gonna work. But yeah, I think that's the thing, is like I always tell people when they're like, oh, I need to start using more AI, I want to do this or do that. It's like, well, what are some problems you have? Right? And let's see if AI could be the solution there. And I'm sure you see this a lot in your business, Justin, where people are like, I want to automate something. And it's like, well, I don't think generative AI is always the best way to automate.
It could be. It's one way to do it. Like I give the example, like if you give a person a hammer and you say your problem is that you have a bunch of rats in your building, what can you use the hammer for to get rid of the rats? Well, you can go around pounding all these thousands of rats. That's one way of doing it, really. Another way is you could go around and you can board up all the holes into the building, right? Or you can use the hammer and you can build mouse traps. But just by giving people a tool doesn't mean they're automatically going to know how to use it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is something I feel like I repeat a lot, which is that tools effectively are only as powerful as those who know how to use the tools in the ways that they're meant to be used. And I think that counts more than ever now with AI, which is why I think it's important to start with kind of problem identification. It's not glamorous. It's a very kind of almost a grunt-like task, but oh my gosh, if you can't identify the problem, what are you doing looking for a tool? There are plenty of tools out there, but how are you going to know which one is going to be most useful for you? I mean, sure, if you have a mouse problem, a hammer, yeah, you could put together a mouse trap, but why do that when you could just buy a mouse trap? You're creating more work for yourself. Now, some people like to create more work for themselves, and God knows lawyers are notorious sometimes for creating more work for themselves than they necessarily need to have. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that if you don't know what you're solving for, what are you even doing in the first place?
I talked with a legal operations manager, and she said that her general counsel is constantly asking her to look at different AI kind of vendor products. And she said she always has to say to her general counsel, no, we don't start with solutions. We start with problems. Tell me the problem that we're trying to solve, and then we will go to the market and we will be able to evaluate how successful they are at solving a problem. If we just go straight to the solution, you're going to be enamored by the shiny thing and say, ooh, I want that, even though it doesn't solve any problem that we have. So yeah, it's a tough thing to have to say to your general counsel.
But it's a smart thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes you have to kind of give folks a perspective that they haven't heard or aren't kind of leaning into, because otherwise they're just going to get more frustrated, and that's then going to fall on others when there doesn't need to be that frustration in the first place. Which often means that, say if you're talking to like a general counsel who's constantly asking about something but doesn't know what they're wanting to use with that something, tell them, great, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I encourage you to experiment with it, but, tell me, some of the problems that you have. And then let's figure out how potentially this could help maybe with one of those problems. You sometimes have to, I think, connect the dots for some of these people because they can't necessarily. It's not that they can't connect the dots themselves. It's just that they're so distracted or so busy they have a difficult time doing so.
Yeah, and for them, they're getting it from the top too, right? Like if your general counsel's telling you, it's like it could be their CEOs telling them, like, why aren't you guys using more AI to decrease legal costs? And it's like, well, what does that mean? But yeah, it's an interesting time in the industry, I would say.
Definitely.
It looks like we have a couple of questions on the LinkedIn chat too from Edward. I'll answer his first one if you want. Yeah. So
okay. Do you want to read it or give the gist of it?
I'll give the gist of it. So Edward, you could correct me if I'm wrong in how I'm interpreting your question. That looking at nested tools, so you give the example of Harvey provides an option for a user to specifically use Claude. So I think that was also to Justin's point earlier. Some of the tools out there say which foundational model you can use, right? So if you're like, oh, I'm a ChatGPT girly, I'm going to use OpenAI, or oh, I like Claude, or I use Gemini, or whatever, you have the choice. And there's some arguments out there for like making sure the product's portable. I'm kind of on the fence about that because I think some of the really cool products out there have kind of like a cool combination of the SLMs and LLMs, and some of them run locally, which I think the pros and cons there with that as well. So Edward's question seems to be about looking at the terms of service. So this kind of seems to be a governance issue, right? So you have all of these nested tools within your tool. So in this case, it's like, okay, I've already agreed to the terms of service for my product, but now I have to look at the terms of service for the foundational model. And you see that too sometimes, like with you have to look, it is kind of a nested doll where you have to look at all the other tools. So for instance, for voice, you have to check and see like what voice AI they're using, right? Like if they're using Whisper has terrible privacy policies, right? That might not be compliant with your use case. Or, Serenity was talking earlier about security and about, different clients and different data has different security risks. So I think there's definitely, when you're looking at these tools, governance is really, really important, and really important to evaluate and look at that. You have to look at the terms of service for everything, and then evaluate the risk, whether or not, you want to put your data in there. I know, Colin, I feel like you have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that companies, well, I'll put it this way. I think that when you are evaluating a vendor, you should not hesitate about asking fairly pointed questions about privacy, data usage, um, AI models and what models are used and that sort of thing. I'm seeing more and more in contracts those kinds of clauses coming up, which I think is a good thing, which are aligned to those types of questions. I do also see a little bit of this. It's not necessarily a problem. It's more of a educational opportunity where uh, some companies are asking for, well, I want you to tell me, how this comes up with this answer every single time, or why this all, give me some degree of predictability here. And the challenge there is that these models are predictable to a point. So you need to be upfront and say, look, I get where you're coming from. I totally understand what you're asking for. I would be asking for the same thing myself, which I have said before. These tools are, operate by searching for patterns. So they will likely come up with a output that is aligned to what you're asking for, but the exact output that it comes up with may not always be the same every single time. And that is not a flaw. That is just an inherent part of these models. So there has to be sort of some degree of comfortability with that. And the way you account for that is by how you interact with these tools and kind of what you ask the tools to do. So I do think there remains a fair degree of sort of education that needs to happen around how these tools operate, which is not an excuse to get away from just simply addressing privacy and not selling of data and being upfront about kind of what policies you have in place around permissions and encryption and various other things. But at the same time, you have to be kind of, I think, as transparent as you can be about the fact that these models, there's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to using these models, and that's just part and parcel of LMs currently.
I heard recently that we actually don't want consistency. We don't want 100% consistency because we want them to generate new things as well. So the sweet spot that I heard is about 85% consistency. If you get 100% consistency, you're never going to get anything new. You're not going to get improved ideas. It's always just going to be the same thing, and we freeze humanity in one spot, which is not good. Also, if you have consistency around like 50%, everybody's going to get frustrated and just give up with it. They gave an analogy of children being straight A students. Like if a student gets 100% correct on every single test in their life, actually that's not a good thing for students because then they feel like, oh, I don't need to try. I don't actually need to learn anything. So they give up trying. Also, if a student like got D's, like a flunked every single test, they would also give up. They would feel like, what's the point? So for a child, the sweet spot is around an 85%. Like a solid B student is actually what you want because that encourages the child to keep learning. So LLMs could be viewed similarly.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, and I can guarantee you, I definitely was not a consistent straight A student at any point in my career, as much as it was painful to not be. But yeah, I think there is again some need for there to be exploration and kind of a evolution.
Mm-hmm. And what I would say is if you want consistency, maybe generative AI isn't the right tool. Maybe we have some tools already in traditional programming that you say, if this, then that, and you get 100% consistency.
I think it depends on what you're using generative AI for as well, right? Like if I am doing like ideation or I'm bouncing ideas off of it, or Serenity was talking about like using it to like fine tune an email or something like that. It's like, yeah, I do want some of that. I do want to use more of the probabilistic nature of it right, to give me some other ideas and things like that. But I think like especially in legal, we're looking it's more deterministic and looking for like more used to deterministic tools, that's where consistency comes into play. So it also depends on how you're using it, right? Like if you're just using a frontier model, maybe you do want some more of that randomness. But if you're using it in a specific tool for drafting, right? Or like redlining, and you want the red lines to only be for these cases, you don't want it to go a little crazy. Maybe you do want some consistency within rail lines, because it's kind of like if you're using a human, for instance, you want that consistency where like if you're redlining a contract, you're like, oh, well, you don't normally redline this. Why did you redline it this time? Maybe there's a reason, right? Maybe it's like, oh, well, I did this because of like our negotiating posture here. You don't want it to be like, oh, because because of the probabilistic nature of the LLM we're using. Or for the person to be like, oh, I don't know, I felt like it. Like that's not.
Lawyers always have to mark up something.
Yeah, right. Well,
You
as
can't
a
not
as
mark
a
up.
salesperson, I felt that sometimes where I'm like, why are you redlining this?
Why are we
Sometimes they
just
have to
moving
prove their
commas
worth
around?
and
Yeah.
change a word. And I've seen it myself. I'm like, and I'm a lawyer, mind you, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, you're literally just doing this because you need to do something. So fine, you want to change that word? Be my guest. Have fun. I don't care. Most
Yeah,
of the
I
time, I should
know.
say.
As a person whose deal's getting stalled in the past, I'd be like, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and me from I guess a traditional simplifying kind of perspective, I would say like, why don't we look at the patterns of what's being redlined, and why don't we just update the template?
Yeah.
If this is changed all the time, just change it permanently and then never
Right.
deal with it again. What is the point of this?
As Colin said, to prove your worth. Anyway.
Okay. All right. So we found the true goal of our work.
And I think Edward had another question, but that looks more for
Mhm.
you, Justin.
At about the 29-minute mark, Justin shared a view of AI specialization. I think that's where I talked about the different frontier models being used in different ways. How would agentic AI and democratization play against a drive of consolidation that may accompany a specialization approach by the big players? So I guess it sounds like an agent could then use all of these different kinds of things. So it's kind of like we're consolidating the specialization back at the agentic layer.
Something that I would like to add here from my own experience, actually, I've, I've like also personally been involved in one of these projects. Like the bigger foundational models are going off after almost every market that they deem big enough to create a wedge of specialization and, like go and capture it with all their might, especially like in finance, as an instance. And it's like every area of finance where they think, the wedge is big enough, like equity research, investment banking, et cetera, like experts are being hired. And it's not even training the model at this point. I don't think it was ever about training the model, just like benchmarking the outputs that the LLMs are spitting, to say what's a good output, what's not a good output. So the models itself have gotten advanced enough to now produce outputs, and now experts are only being used to benchmark and label the outputs. So I don't even think that, it's going to be that much of an uphill battle. And like startups or companies trying to specialize in this space for the sake of specialization should probably be worried about what the foundational models, like companies with like billions and billions of dollars of war chest with them, are trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also going back to like we're talking about all the different legal tech products out there. I mean, that's like the fear, right? That these
Mhm.
foundational models are going to go after the verticals,
Yeah,
right? So instead of
Claude
being
tried
like
to
a
do it
generalized
with
tool,
yeah, but Claude tried to do it, right? Already with
yeah,
contract review or something. Yeah.
yeah, they tried to do it, but then, I
Mhm.
still see contract review companies out there. So
Yeah, I don't think they would, I mean, it'll be that easy for them to just come in and take the market because a lot of this is also relationship driven. Like there are trust issues, there's like a gazillion other mechanical things around it, but I would be worried for like a 4 or 5 year timeline horizon.
yeah, no, totally. And I think some of it too, where it's like, oh, just build this up the way you want it. And
Mm,
we kind of talked a little bit at the beginning
mm,
about this idea of vibe coding for lawyers, legal quants, and
mm,
things like that, where it not, I wonder how much of the appetite is there for that,
mhm. Yeah.
right? Like, how much do people, like, there's some people who really want to do it, which is awesome, 100% support
Mhm,
that. But is that something that like every attorney is going to want to do?
mhm,
Right? Does everyone want to say to themselves, like, is everyone going to be like, all right, like, I'm just going to vibe code my whole practice?
mhm.
I'm seeing it's
Maybe.
the difference between Colin and his husband.
Right.
Somebody actually wants to go build, another one doesn't. Just do it for me. It's somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually the divide is scary in terms of construction projects that are done that I am not necessarily even all that well aware of and just happen. And I'm like, okay, great, great. I'm
Uh,
thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you care. Um, yeah. So anyway,
I
I
uh
need
I
to. I'm afraid I need to
okay.
cut out to actually go back to my day job. But this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate being a part of this. Apologies for my late arrival.
Thanks,
Happy
Colin.
to have
Always a
you.
pleasure. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on clock next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's connect. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
All right, bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
I shared the URL so that we can have audience members come on, and it looks like we have a few people who want to come on. Serenity. It looks like we lost Serenity, but we have another hour if we want to stay on with
I
the
could
audience.
do just a little bit. I could do like 10,
A little.
15.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like I put it in the comments to the LinkedIn, and I did it directly to a couple of people who said that they wanted to attend today.
Okay, great.
So yeah, it's now almost 5 o'clock. Come on, everybody, if you would like to. Um, I had some thoughts as well about this. Like some people want to actually like be involved in
Hmm.
building things. Other people, not so much. They're
Yeah.
And so I
David.
did a podcast episode about this. It's called Going Fast versus Going Far. So I'm seeing
Mm,
there's two different strategies for implementing AI. The first one is just to get some kind of big AI tool, maybe like a Copilot or something, and then you email the entire company and you say, "Here you go, everybody. Good
hmm.
luck. Go figure out how to use this." Right? It's kind of like just buy and pray.
Yeah.
You know, it's an easy story. Then you can just tell the board members, we're now AI powered. Are you doing anything with it? Well, we gave it to everybody. Um, you're probably not going to get very much implemented because people don't have the time. They like we've said, it's not just buying a tool. You have to know how to use it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but this is the easier way. You can just check off a box and say, we're done, the actual the so that's fast. Going far is where you find a use case, you find a team, and you go through all 20 steps of their workflow. And then you have to meet with all the other departments that touch on that. And you actually have to sit down with them and discuss. And there might be like different political things, different motivations you have to align. People have to figure something out. There's give and take between the different parties. It takes time. It's not just an email and you're done. It might take several months, but once you have it all in place, you have something down and it will go far,
Hmm.
much different than going fast. It's not going to be fast.
I mean, that's the thing is people are like, oh, I just want to use AI. And I think it's a lot of you see just in procurement in general, where it's like this tool is gonna this tool is gonna do everything for me. I don't have like this tool, I just buy it, my problems are solved, and not doing the tough part about implementation, which you really need to do, especially with the AI tools, right? And I think it's interesting, like mapping out your workflow and things like that. Like between that
Mhm.
and understanding your information governance, like where all of your data is I think like that's why you get that, the stats of like, oh, 95% of pilot projects don't work. It's like, yeah, because you don't know where any of your data is. It can't actually utilize that grounding knowledge. And you don't know your
Ah,
workflow and like what you're going to use it for. So it's like, of course this isn't going to work.
I see Oiku has joined us. You can come back
Hi.
on, Oiku, if you want to share your camera again.
Yes, hello. Hello, excuse me.
Let's let you introduce yourself and you can meet Emma.
Yes,
Hi.
hello.
Nice to meet
Hello.
you.
Nice meeting you. I thought I joined in the wrong group chat when you were talking, and I just stood in between, but I think I don't
No,
know.
you're good.
Yeah. How are you?
And then, hey, Brooks.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Justin.
Hey. Do you want to introduce yourself, Oiku? And then Brooks, if you want to introduce yourself as much as you want to. I guess you don't even have to say anything that you don't want to.
No, I would love to. I would love to. I just closed
Okay.
my office work and opened my new camera. I'm ready to introduce myself. My name is Öykü Dündar. I just started working at Fluke Corporation as a contract specialist. It's my first month. I graduated last year, and I was having a gap, sorry, my cat, gap and job hunt here. It succeeded, and now I'm looking for the ways how to improve the office life, as I've seen there are a lot to improve. Then I remembered Justin. We met in a Legal Hops drinks.
Mhm.
It was an
We met networking.
informal drinks, and we met there, and I remembered his work, and I thought he might be the one that could actually make things a bit faster, maybe more practical. So I wanted to join the session to hear more about it.
Wow, we have lots of people.
Yeah, I
All
think we're
right.
still live too.
Uh-huh. This is my first time actually seeing Edward live. I've chatted with him so much on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You're on mute. You want to introduce yourself, Edward? And we also have Misty and Brooks, if he wants to introduce himself.
Greetings, all. I'm actually connected to Emma, so I was having a side conversation with her as well. Yes, Justin, I've been following you for a while. I love these little chat spheres, and I look forward to joining on this one. You can see by the couple of questions that I had during the process there. My aim is to learn and kind of glean, so I'll try not to speak. I'm an extrovert, so it's like easy for me to go crazy on speaking. So I will try to pull back a little bit and let others speak.
All right. And
So I'm gonna
Misty.
jump on camera
Oh,
real quick. Sorry.
okay.
Crazy morning traveling today. I have 5 cats, and they will jump in front of the camera, so I'll probably keep it off. Justin and I know each other because for about 5 years, I worked customer success for Thomson Reuters in legal tech, and we worked together. Then we continued conversations around legal tech for a while after that. And it's just a passion of mine, so I'll try and shut up. But I have a lot of opinions and a lot of insights. I'm really excited to see what this group brings because I've been following it. And I just think there's so much about process that Justin brings such a scalpel-like edge to, and dividing that line between automation and the myth of AI. And that's about it from me. You'll hear more at some point, and feel free to put me on mute.
And Misty.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. yeah, I'm connected with Justin. I also do like legal ops and kind of like law firm work, doing automations, kind of dabbling in AI, trying to find the line. So a lot of Justin's insights kind of sit with me, and when you're taking a walk, thinking about what you're going to do next, a lot of the things that you say, Justin, kind of jump out at me, and I'm able to use them. So I really appreciated that.
Oh, wow. This is so much fun, like meeting everybody. Like many of you I've never talked with you. I've just like typed messages. So even just to hear your voice, Edward, now I have a voice that goes in my head with the real person. Okay. Uh, I understand Emma needs to go in a couple of minutes. Do you want to say anything, Emma, before
Uh,
you go?
no, I don't think I don't have any final remarks, but I can hang out for a few minutes, let other people speak.
Okay. Yeah. So anybody want to share what they're working on? Maybe what you're struggling with, and then everybody else can say, yeah, I'm struggling with that same thing. AI is being overhyped. We need to use it in the right way. We need to look for the right tool. Maybe that's my perspective. Maybe other people have different perspectives.
The perspectives that I would share is that I follow this impact from multiple different angles. I follow it from the angle of the business of law, in part because law is a third arc in my career. I had arcs as an engineer for more than a decade. I had arcs in management for more than a decade, and then I came into law. So my view of the business of law is not your standard AmLaw 100, AmLaw 200, that type of stuff I view as are somewhat archaic from management theory, and AI is going to hasten change there, and that's what part of what I follow. The other aspect that I follow is in the legal protection realm of intellectual property. How is AI going to impact copyrights, patents, things of that nature? So those are the different perspectives that I follow.
So I'm getting from you then, like your approach is to actually use law to do something. Um, Instead of like in the previous section, we had some of our experts talking about how one of the main things that lawyers do is just showing their value. We're creating our own need. So it's not actually to do things that benefit the business necessarily.
And
Or to
and
stroke
that
our
is
egos.
Justin, exactly. And that actually plays into whether you're in-house or external. I've never been in-house from a legal capacity, although I've been in-house from a management capacity across several different management functions. In my management career, I job hopped somewhat to be an engineering manager, an operations manager, an R&D business unit manager, marketing, technical marketing and sales manager. So I put on a lot of hats inside a firm. Um, Never had the legal aspect has always been on the outside of a firm. So my perspectives are very different there. And the thing about um, having a say, making a red line. I actually have a adage about that. It's called the hairy paw. I won't use this form for it, but Justin, I'll share that with you in a DM. The story of the hairy paw, and it is something that I actually shared and as I mentored younger attorneys that came into our group. It's like you always will have the boss wanting his fingerprints on something, his change, his buy-in, his thing, and you could build your own internal process to accompany that.
I see Brooks raised his hand, so come on, Brooks.
Yeah, no, it's just been a weird journey for me lately because last year I've been working small law outside counsel, but the core functionality from in-house, even as a third-party contractor, and what concerned corporate clients hasn't changed. It's always that value story. Now, what we're doing is different, but that driver, where legal is always struggling for funding, whether it's getting a bill paid on time or getting funding from the business itself, is really driven by what value are you delivering. And it's, immediacy versus long-term strategic results. And I think there's a real struggle there that we're still trying to articulate, especially with new investments and what we can do with new technology and more improved workflow processes. That's my 2 cents on it.
And I see two competing approaches here. One is efficiency. Efficiency is the easy thing that you can do right now. You can have it by the next quarter. You can show that a line is going up. You can quantify efficiency. The other things of innovation, of giving better customer experience, these are kinds of value that lawyers provide, that the business can trust us and they have a good relationship and that they rely on us and we're good business partners. Those kinds of things are much harder to quantify. And as you're using technology to innovate, it's experimental. We're exploring. We don't necessarily know the way to go. And maybe there's multiple ways. Different clients want to reach out to us in different ways. And so, yeah, showing this kind of value can have better long-term results, but it's also harder to quantify and tell that story. All right, we've got people putting things in the chat. Edward, you want to say your piece? Innovation aspect. Henry Ford's not a faster horse.
So there's two aspects here, and it's always out there. It's like the value aspect. Internal is always looking for, one thing is cost. And AI is going to be a disruptive factor there because it leads to a drive to the bottom, a commodification of legal services. I was in one seminar within the last month. It was how to control outside spend. And that group projected that in-house counsel will be clawing back up to 80% of what they sent to outside counsels, because of the integration of AI in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Unless a Jevons paradox comes across with AI, law firms are going to crater because of the lack of work. It's going to bring a bunch of stuff. The other comment I had there was innovation aspect. Henry Ford's not a faster horse. That goes to just in our past conversations on augmentation versus automation. I know automation is something that comes to your lips real easy, and you've actually distinguished a way of automating and augmenting at the same time. You're looking at your process as you're automating your process. Do we really still need this step? No, we don't. We're going to change the process because we have a tool that can change the process. And I look at that as an augmentation aspect. But Henry Ford's not a faster horse is an innovation story where Henry Ford was asked, did you ask, the populace what they wanted? And he goes, no, I didn't bother with asking them, because if I asked them, they would have told me that they wanted a faster horse, not an automobile. And that's actually changing the process from an innovation angle, as opposed to giving people what they want with a tool. And a great conversation today about tools. It's a hammer. I can use a hammer to pound a nail. I can use a hammer to pound the thousands of mice. But if you sit back and you innovate and say, do I even need a hammer? I won't even need a hammer because I've eliminated the mice through this other way. I bought a cat. Brooks.
Uh-huh.
I invited Brooks over with his thousands of cats, and it solved my mouse problem.
All right. And Brooks has been putting some comments in here. You want to say your piece, Brooks?
Well, and I'll even go on camera for this. This is where it gets really interesting because, okay, so contract lifecycle management automation is the hot topic that I see popping up because it's an easy, low-hanging fruit. It's gotten so much better than it used to be prior to large language models. But then there's compliance. So the last major corporate work I did was with large banks and wanting to use, the new Harvey, whatever Westlaw is branding itself as, for compliance work. And there's that completion bias to generative AI that leads to, you'll type in a query and it'll tell you, oh, XYZ, but that's not actually the answer. So you have in-house legal teams going and looking for efficiency where they're getting answers that are kind of correct, but if you look to the case law or statutes they're citing to, it's an incomplete reading that is being weighed more heavily towards answering the query rather than going, I don't know. This is an ambiguous area of law. And this is where small law actually dovetails quite nicely in, because I work for an insane 80-year-old man. So we sue city governments and I get questions that are just bizarre. So I will go in and start, and just as a starting point, hit these next gen research models, and it'll say, oh, yes, no, here. And I'll look at the case law and be like, this has nothing to do with my query. So we're looking at a rapidly evolving model where it's not making up citations. It's ChatGPT is the devil, and it is open source. So there's also that IP aspect to it, where so many young lawyers, and I even see this in my own firm, where I yell at one of my colleagues all the time because he'll just be like, oh, I'm just going to put this in ChatGPT. I'm like, well, you just put everything we've done out in the world. And then you see that at larger firms where they're doing it. I'm like, well, okay, so all that work you've done in developing this strategy is now just part of their model. And it's going to everyone else who's using it. You've just lost any control over that. And it's gotten too complex for me to have a very clear, coherent point on this, but I just want to open that up to a much broader element.
All right, Misty or Oiku, you two are kind of quiet. Anything to say?
I would love to say a lot of things, share my insights, but I don't feel I have the experience enough to share what I've been through or what I'm just observing now. That's why I'm also here to learn and to observe your opinions. I started work this month. It is my first full-time job, and I work as a contract specialist in-house. So I relate to that. Even it's in my first month, but I can't make such statements yet. That's why I'm sticking.
Congratulations. We were all new, just like you.
I think it's a good time to be new because there is so much to learn, so much access to information. I think the AI piece does provide a lot of that because you can learn about, whatever the industry or kind of the internal workings of wherever you are. There's a lot. You can do a deep dive and find information easily, which I like. But one question I've had is about the price of all of this. I feel like we are all experimenting and we are all being told, find these use cases, find these efficiencies, find ways to automate. But is the price that we're paying for these tools and all of this compute power right now going to be what it is in the future? And how much should that play into these decisions that we're making? Should everything be automated, and what's it going to cost going forward? Because I see already a lot of things that they kind of dangle in front of you. Oh, now there's a cost associated with that, and it's expensive to run these computers. So is anybody considering that when they decide what to experiment on now while things are relatively cheap?
So just insider's perspective, I mean, I think last figure was close to almost $1 trillion that Thomson Reuters had invested just in generative AI. Which is insane. And the projected internal recovery rates were at like 5 years. And now they're going, oh no, it's going to be 20, 30 years before we can recover that. So they really tried to hit a pricing model that everyone looked at and went, nah, we're good. We're doing just fine. So there's going to be a longer clawback cycle for that investment, and it's almost taken on a life of its own, where I think everyone's so deep into that investment that they can't stop investing, because then, well, everyone gets fired. So senior leadership's just like, okay, no, we continue to invest, and we're going to just continue to push this idea that we're going to recoup all these costs within 5 years. But then it hits the market, and the pricing models right now, there's a lot of room for leveraging negotiations and pushing down those costs. So whatever provider you're going with, there's so much competition in the market. And if you're in that position where you're negotiating, I'm saying this as someone who's worked on the inside, hit those levers hard. Say, you've got 8 competitors. Your product does the exact same thing that theirs does. And get into those multi-year and get in that contractual language that says we're doing a 4% year-over-year increase. I will sign with you for a 5-year deal, because what you build isn't going to differ, because you have to keep competitive. So by signing a 5-year deal with TR, with Lexus, it's not going to change the actual product you get. What it is going to change is when the product is fully realized and the use cases are there, and there's a better value story than what we have right now, which is vague and questionable and doesn't readily replace existing internal functions. Well, 5 years from now, then all of a sudden you have a legacy contract where you're like, well, I'm just going to renew with those terms. And you're like, no, we have a 20% price increase. And it's like, no, read the fine print on my contract. Amex did this to me, where they had a 3% year-over-year increase on legal tech for just managing outside counsel spend. And it was brilliant because they flooded, and our entire pricing model was not built around that. And they just kept hammering it for 20 years, and we couldn't do anything about it. It was one of the best negotiations, and I just inherited this. And I looked at it and went, well, I hate you as from my end because everyone's yelling at me, but absolutely brilliant. So early adoption and getting in and negotiating favorable terms and long-term investment pay huge dividends, as long as it's, a major competitor within the field who isn't going to just disappear overnight. I mean, there will be flash in the pans, the startups, and some of them will offer better terms, but there's so much leverage in that marketplace right now. I'm going to stop myself because
Edward's got a question to Brooks.
So I threw a couple things in the chat. First, to Misty and Oiko's condition in that exchange, off-firm or personal use of AI. Oiko, I could see you, being brand new in an item and having lots of ideas of your own, and the firm might be a little bit staid and not have actual tools, or they may not have a policy, or it might be a larger firm and they have an AI policy. The AmLaw 100 firm I was with briefly, was there when AI was exploding, and they had a internal policy of no one shall use any AI, period. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but that was the stated policy. In light of the EU AI Act and a firm's responsibilities for controlling their agents, if you use your phone, because AI is everywhere now, and you do use your phone to use little AI, you may have violated policy. I don't know how much that is known. So there's a whole can of worms related to that aspect of it. To Brooks' discussion, the startups, I'm a little leery of startups personally, and the explosion of the democratization I put in earlier. DeepSeek has, had a wrinkle that upset the U.S. majors because they came in with very portable models and very cheap and processing costs and whatnot, and that might happen again. But as far as the emerging vendor sets, Are we going to expect a shakeout? Is there a coming AI winter that will cool things down? Long-term contracts. I'm not sure as I'm not sure if I would want a long-term contract. I have no idea what tomorrow's technology is going to be. So those are a whole bunch of things in my mind as this discussion is unfolding.
So I thought about this too, and I just cat attack again, but the idea that the genie's out of the bottle. Again, the market's so heavily invested, it's not going to stop. To stop now would cripple it. Plus, there are use cases that are value driving. I think everyone's overly invested, but they're going to continue to overinvest. And yes, there will be a winner, but that winner will be more infrastructure driven than anything else in my mind, where there won't be the bandwidth. The API infrastructure for just data exchanges isn't there. The engineers we need to actually be able to integrate ERPs with all these systems isn't there. And yes, it is a Dutch tulip situation. It is always the case. But as in anything else, wariness and good contracting can protect you from the biggest fallout. So again, I think these long-term investments where you do provide that stability to these large companies which have other revenue streams that will render them at least slightly immune from that collapse, because there will be that winner, I think, where you really do call that out, and I agree wholeheartedly, is where I see that future and survival coming from. And you do have a huge set of tools that we just don't have the fully developed use cases for yet.
When I'm advising people like what types of tools to use, often I'll use an analogy of like not just technology, but like let's compare it to transportation. So AI is the hot thing right now. It's really cool. You might compare it to a rocket in transportation. And if somebody was to say like, hey, I'm gonna ride a rocket from here to the other side of the world, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. That's a good use for it. But if the person said, I use a rocket to go from my house to work every day, I'd be like, are you sure you really need to do that? And then if the person says, I use a rocket to go from my couch to the kitchen, I'll be like, that's definitely not the right use. So for me personally, I compare that to AI. Like AI is really cool. It is cool to say like I used a rocket to go to my kitchen. Like that's kind of cool to sound, but you don't need it. Maybe I'm showing my age. Like I've been programming for 20 years. So the computers I programmed on a long time ago were much smaller, much less RAM and memory, to the point that today's computers are able to do so much. And I'll look at something like Word. Microsoft Word today takes so much RAM compared to what it took 20 years ago. And what I'm hearing from developers is that the developers are becoming more and more lazy. They're not being efficient because they don't have to be. The technology makes up for their laziness. So if we go down this path and use AI in everything, absolutely, just because we can, like what happens when there is that day of reckoning? When we have to pay the electric bill and suddenly everybody's like, oh crap, we're using too much. So I tell my clients, like, use it sparingly. If you can use another tool better, use that. So you don't open yourself up to risks. So you don't become dependent on these things that just like Uber back in the day was also subsidized by venture capital money, and it was very, very cheap. But then once they capture the market, the prices go up. So the prices that we're seeing with AI today, that's not where it's going to be in 5 years. The venture capital company is going to stop subsidizing.
Well, and to jump into the Uber analogy, I mean, once they dominate the market, I'm talking seeing in New York City in real time, 5, 6 years ago, when surge pricing, where you would go 8 blocks and it'd be $120, and then all of a sudden you had state regulation step in and be like, no, if you're going to knock out the entire New York taxi service, then we're going to put limits on the multipliers you can put into effect during surge pricing events. So the EU has been much better about regulating and just on social media platforms. So I think they're not going to be too far behind in imposing the same restrictions on generative AI and what those impacts are in terms of resources consumed. The US will lag far behind, but will eventually catch up when the economic reality hits. We're going to see market booms and busts. It'll be a gold rush as it is now. And still, there is value. And I think back to your original point, at just small law, just trying to explain to my managing partner, hey, I'm doing intake. I love doing client intake now, but we could just do this using Microsoft Forms. And mocked it up, and I showed it to him, and he was like, no, I like having them fill out and scan in a Word document.
Wow.
He's 80. He's insane. I'm leaving there soon, like this week. But that's the resistance I think you're going to see even in large law to that adoption. Is there will be these holdouts, and there will be managing partners who like the way they do things, and they will linger for another couple of years. But there's this time where we're in this very liminal space where there's this transition, and it will be these old ways and then the new, but also the fact that, yeah, you can code efficiently, and a lot of the tasks that are being touted as, generative AI can do this quicker, can be done much more efficiently and much less expensively in terms of computational power using existing tools. Just Power Automate alone. You turned me on to this, Justin, and it's still this just massive playground that I keep diving into and go, oh, wow, I can do this. And that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I'll do a demo of some kind of a solution that I build for a potential client, and they go, wow, what kind of AI did you use? And I say, there's no AI in this. So it's like people are confusing AI with just the word technology. Like my previous example, calling a rocket transportation, and they think all transportation from now on is rockets.
So you mean, I was gonna say, to invest in a tool, not an AI tool in your sense, it is technology. I was gonna use the word AI as technology. Who will just keep the books or doing the transformation between the long email chains. It's just for the workflow, the standard work, filling in the templates doesn't require that much of a legal knowledge. Not really. To invest in a technology automation system than a junior and preparing their onboarding, prepare financially for them. Don't you think it is better? Because I thought, or enlighten me, you were talking about it. It is a crisis financially to invest in AI for everything. Was it what you're talking about, or I misunderstood?
Exactly. So don't use it for absolutely everything. Like using a rocket for transportation to everywhere. That's probably too much.
But don't you think it will be a solution to invest in an automation system in this work, at least for this workflow that I am currently facing, forwarding the finance mail to the sales operation and forwarding them the back and forth? Can it be automated and would be less costly?
Of course. If you have a pattern, It can be described in traditional programming to where you build it once and then the computer just does that. From what I'm seeing with like these AI agents, they'll make up a process. And then let's say like you need it slightly different. Maybe somebody has changed, right? Somebody leaves the company, somebody new, and now you need them to be involved in the process. Where do you tell the AI that this person has changed and all this? And even as you run it, it might be making up the process every single time. And as we talked about, using resources, like why does it need to recreate the process every single time? Like you could write the process once.
And just speaking directly to contract lifecycle management, having done CLM tools integration both pre LLM and post, mapping that out as a workflow in terms of intake request form, filling in fields, and auto-populating those contracts. You used to be able to hard code that into a templated document and embed it in a repository where you would just have a guideline wiki that would pop up and give you all those insights and say, hey, here are negotiable terms. If we change, 3 years to 2 years, we go from 5% to a 3%. And you'd have a playbook that was there running side by side. None of that involved any kind of agent or artificial generative AI. It was just hard coded. It was laborious to implement. And there were so many failed implementations because you had limited resources, you had huge timetables, and so much pressure from senior leadership to deliver a finalized product within 3 months. And well, we've got 80 stakeholders who all want to weigh in and constantly changing goalposts. So that's part of that drive, is the fact that a lot of times you're running into these situations where, especially new into the field, they say they want one thing, and then 2 days later that changes, and you go, okay, well now I have to redesign the entire project. And then 2 days later, it changes again, and any resources you have are going, well, that's a ton of back-end changes. So that's the draw. That's the honeypot of generative AI, is I can make all these changes on the fly, but the actual built-in resources and backbone of having it built in and hard-coded is that everyone has to agree that there is a clear guideline, and you're not running afoul or in danger of it creating new rules and having changes within the core business or stakeholders that you just go completely off the rails. So I've seen that happen too.
This was my podcast episode. I think it was last week or maybe the week before. Going fast versus going far. If you want to go fast, you just get an AI tool like Copilot or something, and you just email the whole company. Hey guys, here it is. You go figure it out. It's not going to go very far because there is all this friction that Brooks just mentioned about getting everybody aligned, getting all the decision makers in the room to discuss these issues. If you want to go far, it's going to take time, and you're going to have to get all of these people in the same room. They're going to have to discuss. People give things and take. There's political machinations. It's hard. And I don't see AI being able to just wave a wand and get rid of this. It's dealing with people. We have to figure out what we want from the tools.
I think with any tools, adoption is going to be the most expensive part. Whether even if the AI or the automation is making life a lot easier, that adoption piece, depending on how many people you have, is the most costly. And if people aren't following the process, you don't really have a process. And so when we do look at things like the price of these systems, these automations going
Edward.
up.
Nice to have you.
You know, there might be changes to how things are done or how much resources you want to use, how many tokens you want to use, and then does your process change again in the future? So I've been thinking about, you know, how can I use these systems to maybe to do one-time work, to analyze large amounts of information, you know, throwing outside counsel bills into a system and looking for insights or, you know, things like that that can I use this computing power while it's cheap, and then build some of the knowledge and you know, the institutional knowledge for a company that they can use to make decisions going forward about, you know, how long are different processes taking, things like that. That kind of insight at the price right now, I think, is really valuable.
Sorry, this is just a favorite topic of mine, and one where I lived, breathed, kind of made a little space for myself. Um, Power BI is your best friend as long as you're getting outside counsel bills in leads format. You can load all of that into just Power BI and build out great infographics, pull out key points, and then context is king. I think one of the most powerful experiences I ever had was going to a very large tech social media company that we may or may all not know, and going, hey, you're paying a first year associate $1,300 an hour. This seems really insane. And you've already paid them almost $500 million this year. Where I was swiftly shut down by their CLO, where they're like, nope, nope, every single dollar there. And then I looked into this particular associate and I went, oh, okay. They've got the credentials and they are working at a white shoe DC firm that does lobbying. And this was at a time where this particular company was facing a lot of regulatory scrutiny. It's like, so that's, oh, okay, that's where that money is going. So you can, but mapped out everything. I said, well, here's areas where, yes, you are being overbilled. And one of the biggest trends is just pulling out keywords. And this is where I love Power BI, where you pull out line item descriptions and you start just doing keyword filters and filter by partner and review. And one of the best negotiation tactics I've ever seen is just, you know, I will either pay for the half hour a partner spent reviewing an associate's work, or I will pay for the draft by the associate, not both. And almost every firm has caved on that and said, okay, that's reasonable. It's which one do you want? Do you want the 3 hours that the associate billed for, or the half hour of review? You can't get both. Because that's just every law firm's dream, is to take that double
dip.
lick of the lollipop. Yep. So, and that's it's an easy. It was one of my easy magic tricks that I used to pull, and it's one of the best ways to just go, here's how we cut, depending on size, 50,000, 500,000 of outside counsel costs without actually ruffling feathers. It's a pleasant conversation. It's just, hey, we can't pay for both. This is unreasonable. You know it. And they do. And it violates legal ethics. So as soon as you call them on it, they just go, oh, yeah, that was a mistake. And they blame whoever their billing manager is. And you have this massive drop.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's good. Yeah, I have too.
It's a unique opportunity to get us. We're all in different places around the world, all in different stages, all in different places. We're doing legal work, but all in completely different ways. And yeah, it's just so nice to be able to talk to other people and to get their perspectives. It's not the echo chamber.
I really appreciate that. I enjoyed listening to all of you. And I think with time, I'll have more questions and insights on this topic. So I'll definitely enjoy with all of you. And I'm going to keep myself updated with your podcasts and your profile more. Not
All
especially.
right. I'm glad to hear that it's helping so many people. Because usually it's just week after week, I just sit here and I talk into the camera, just put it out to the world, whatever insights I think I might have.
Yeah, they
I
stick
love-
around for sure.
Thank you for that. I should also leave. It was very nice meeting you.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to discuss, or we can always leave early if you want.
Yeah, I should leave early. See you.
Okay. Bye, Oiko.
Thanks for the chat, everyone.
Misty,
It
do
was
you have
nice.
anything that you wanted to bring up?
No, I think I'm good. I got a lot from this conversation, and Brooks, thank you for chiming in with lots of real examples and where this stuff, where this stuff has happened. I think it's good to start, channeling some of that energy into,
Yeah, no, I'm known
real
for manic
applications.
insights. It's okay. And thank you, Justin. So I will leave early, but always a pleasure.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you guys all in my life.
Have a
Thank you,
great
Justin.
evening, day. I'm gonna go shower and get ready to fly. Bye, everyone.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye. All right, and that is the last of today's episode. It's a group chat. We're going to be having these about every 3 months, where we have a panel of experts for the first hour or so, and then we invite anyone from the audience who would like to come on and have a chat with us as well. It's a great opportunity to meet people from all different walks of life, from all different areas of the world, with different perspectives. And if we could do this in person, that would be amazing. But this, I hope, is the next best thing. And I hope that people get a lot of benefit out of this, and that it helps you in your journey as you look to see how you want to improve your processes and automate your work. And so until next time, I wish you happy automating.